So far, we have understood the OOPS concept and we have gone through the detail of um, individual OOPS concepts like encapsulation, inheritance, and many more. So, before moving to the next topic, let's do some exercise on OOPS. So, the first question is procedure oriented program. Procedure oriented program are called as structured programming, object oriented programming, functional programming, or none of them. So procedure oriented programming are called as structured programming. It is not a object oriented programming, it is not a functional programming. Okay. Next one is, what is a class whose instance themselves are classes? So it means that once you create a instance of a class, generally it is an object, because object is the instance of class. But there is a exceptional case where when we instance the class, that becomes a class. So that happens when we do the meta classes. Next one is, what enables you to hide inside the object both the data feeds and the method that acts on that data? So this kind of concept we call as encapsulation. So encapsulation is basically hiding the data, what we need to expose, what not to expose. So the answer of this question is encapsulation. Moving to next. What is the process of creating new classes called derived classes from existing classes called base class? So existing class is called base class, and whatever class we create, that is called derived class. This process is done in inheritance. So inheritance is the answer. Next question is, what class can store selected properties of its base class? So derive and subclass are the classes that can share the selected property of its base class. So your answer is B and C. The advantage of OOPS are increase programming productivity, or decrease maintenance cost, or less time to execute, or easy to understand. So from here, first 2 points are the suiting best. So it increase the programming productivity because you are going with modular concept. You are thinking elementary as an object which has data and some functions on that, and of course it decreases the maintenance cost. It is very much easy maintenance. So most of the OOPS concepts will help you to reduce the maintainability, so you can maintain easily. OOPS exercise. Next is, OOPS uses top bottom approach or bottom approach. So as I explained you, structured programming or procedural programming, they use top bottom approach. OOPS uses bottom top approach. Next, do all languages support OOPS? No, there are few languages which doesn't support OOPS. There are few languages who supports partially, means they support few of the OOPS concept but not fully. Procedural language is top bottom approach or bottom approach. So this is opposite to that OOPS. So OOPS is bottom top approach, and procedural or structural language is top bottom approach. OOPS allows to decompose a problem into a number of entities called object, because whole the problem it divides into smaller things where the minimum unit is called as a object, where you have certain data and some functions, some activities performing on those data. OOP allows us to decompose data problem into a number of entities, so answer is object. The combination of data and method make up an object, right? So as an object is combination of data and methods, so answer is object. Next is object may communicate with each other through class or method. So when we create, suppose we have some class, when we create the instance of that class, that is the object, and that object communicate from among them through methods. So they are sending the message through one method, and receiver will receive the message through certain method. So method is the channel where object do the communication from one object to another object. Next, the insulation of data from direct access by the program is called abstraction or data hiding or private. So this is something called we call encapsulation concept, where encapsulation is nothing but data hiding, where you have control on direct access of the data from a program. So your object has some data and methods which you want to control. You have to provide the access to outside of object or not. That control you can do through encapsulation. So the property of encapsulation is data hiding. So answer of this question is data hiding. What provide the interface between objects data and the program? The objects data and program, there are methods that provide the interface between objects data and the program. The process in which the code to be linked with the procedure call is not known till execution time. It is called basically dynamic binding. So dynamic binding is, you can say, as a late binding also, which is opposite to the early binding and static binding. So the answer of this question is dynamic binding. So when a code has been called, when program has been written and executed, the method execution of any object that happens while execution time of the program, that is called dynamic binding. Opposite to that, next question is that when the code to be linked with the call as known as at compile time, that situation is called early binding or static binding. So you can say that execution time and compile time. Execution time, whenever method been called, that is called dynamic binding, and the time of compilation, whatever method been called, that is called static binding. Instance and class variables are declared inside class, outside class, in the main method. So all the instance and the class variable are declared inside the a class, not outside, not in the main method. So I will tell you in later courses what is the scope of whatever class variables we do define. So we can define in the method also, we can define in the class outside of method, but anyhow it is inside a class. Instance variable are created when the objects are, and therefore they are associated with the objects. So once your instance is created, so the instance creation will happen when the object is instantiated. So the answer of this question is C, that is instantiated. When your object is instantiated, that is the instance of the class, then all the variables and method will be bound to that object. The property of the property or the ability to take more than one form is called polymorphism. So polymorphism, you have something called same name and having different kind of parameter, it performs different activities. So the ability to take more than one form is called polymorphism. Polymorphism is extensively used in implementing inheritance. So inheritance is the concept where you have some interface where it is being implemented by so many subclasses. So that kind of concept is called polymorphism, which will be achieved by inheritance, not by encapsulation, not by data hiding.